Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I want to talk to you guys about, or rather report to you guys, what the difference is with different types of ammunition with different bullet weights at 50 yards, right? Because what we will typically do is we'll use one type of ammunition. A 50-yard zero is very common because it gives us a second zero at 200 yards. So as you go back and forth from one type of ammunition to another type of ammunition, what's the difference at 50 yards versus what does it do further downrange? Okay, so this rifle over here, this is a Ruger MPR 18-inch barrel with using match grade ammunition, right? 77 grain Sierra Matchkings. This will get a half-inch group at 100 yards. Okay, so this is a half MOA rifle. I'm using this because I know it's an accurate rifle. So I have zeroed this in with a 77 grain bullet at 50 yards. Okay, so at 50 yards, this particular reticle has a chevron. I put the chevron at the bottom of this bullseye, and basically I impact inside this blue area over here. Okay, so what I did here is I said, okay, let's try these 55 grain Wolf Gold and this Wolf WM 193, again at 50 yards. And basically they're pretty much impacting right in the bullseye area. Again, putting the chevron right underneath it. They're all impacting right there. So I tried again, it was the Wolf Gold, the Wolf 193, and then I also tried Federal XM 193. It tends to be a little, these two Wolves get 1 inch at 100 yards. Okay, so this is one MOA ammunition in that rifle. The two Federals here, the 855 and the 193, they get like 2.5 inches at 100 yards. Okay, so when I shot the 193, you can see how even at 50 yards the group opened up a little bit. I got some hits up here. I got 2 hits down here. I have a 6-shot group. Because I did two groups of 3 shots each, total 6 shots. But the point is, even though the group opened up a little bit, it's still in the bullseye at 50 yards. Okay, and then I said, okay, let's try. These are all 55. This is all 55 grain ammo. Let me throw in there the green tips, right? That's there, the green tips. The 62 grain, right? So I threw in the green tips. I had to put in a different bullseye here because it just got a little bit too cluttered. So when I threw in the 62 grain green tip, basically it's a look at it, it's a nice group. It's like a half-inch group at 50 yards, right? So that's a 1 MOA. Normally this green tip normally gets 2.5 inches at 100 yards, although sometimes it will do better. Right now I got a half-inch at 50 yards, so basically this is coming in at about 1 MOA, although that's not what I normally get. But regardless, the point is that even with the heavier bullet, again, putting the chevron right at the base of this little blue dot here, I'm basically still on target. Okay, there is no point of impact shift with a variety of ammunition. Now, this is not to say that you will never see a point of impact shift. Sometimes I have used that ammunition where I've seen a significant point of impact shift, like way off to the left, right. But the point I'm making here is that it doesn't necessarily need to be the case. You have to test out the ammunition to be sure. So I think that what this is illustrating, having tried 4 different types of ammunition here, 5 really, because like I said, this rifle was zeroed in with 77 grain Sierra Matchkings. Okay, so amongst these 5 different types of ammunition that I'm looking at here, and we're looking at 255 grains, 162 grain, and 177 grain. At 50 yards, it's all in the bullseye, right? Now, what this means, and I know this for certain, even though I can't demonstrate it right now, at further distance downrange, at 200 yards, even though they're all hitting about the same at 50 yards, at 200 yards, we're going to start seeing a little bit of a difference, okay? At 300 yards, we're going to see even more of a difference. We're going to start seeing some of them dropping more than others. At 500 yards, there will be even more of a difference, okay? So the point I'm trying to bring out here is just because you're hitting something at 50 yards. If you intend to be shooting at distance at 300 yards or 500 yards, you have to reconfirm. So what I normally do with these rifles, right, once I get a 50-yard zero, what I will usually do, since the 5.56 is usually accurate out to about 600 yards, I'll go to halfway distance at 300 yards, and I'll make sure that at 300 yards, I'm hitting where I want to be hitting, right? And I will basically readjust at 300 yards if need be. Now, in this case, since this is tuned for 77 grain bullets, I'm not going to readjust for all this other ammunition at 300 yards. I'm just going to figure out what my holdover needs to be at those different distances, right? Because I got mill lines in there where I can take notes, and I can say, hey, with this type of ammunition, at 500 yards, I got to hold here. With this other type of ammunition, at 500 yards, I got to hold that on this different line. With this other type of ammunition, at 500 yards, I got to hold on this different line, okay? So that's what we refer to as dope. You got to just collect the ammunition. But what I want you guys to know is that here I have 5 different types of ammunition. They're all basically hitting bullseyes at 50 yards, even though they're like different weight bullets. And I know for a fact that at 300 yards and 500 yards, they're all going to do different things, right? They're all going to impact at different heights. And I plan to go out to a different location within the next couple of weeks, where I'm going to be shooting at 500 yards plus, and with this ammunition, and we'll see what it does at distance, and I'll show you guys that when I've gotten there. Now, I've done this type of thing in the past, but I haven't done a test where I went with 5 different types of ammunition and tested them at distance. And now that I've recorded this and we have this to refer back to, right, where you can see that they're all impacting bullseyes at 50 yards, I'll set up a target at distance. I think it'll be 550 yards, and we'll see what this ammunition does at that distance. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you all soon. Hey, one of the things I meant to do, and I think I forgot, was to show you the actual bullet velocities that I have measured on the chronograph for those ammunitions. Now, you can't go by what's on the box. You have to actually run it through a chronograph and get the data yourself. It never matches what's on the box, because basically, you got to match it to your rifle. So this is an 18-inch barrel. The Wolf Gold velocity 30.28. Okay, the Wolf 193 velocity 29.37. We didn't do Tula, but that comes in at 29.72. The Federal Green Tips 30.15, and the Federal XM 193 31.31. Okay, so you can see that there's a nice bit of variance here, especially between the Wolf 193 and the Federal 193, 29.37 versus 31.31. On the energy side, because you gotta look at the energy, especially if you got like different weight bullets, like the 62 grain. On the energy side, you can see the Wolf Gold is 11.20. The Wolf 193 is 10.53. The Tula comes in at 10.78. The Federal Green Tips at 12.52, so that's the hottest one, and the Federal XM 193 at 11.98. So these two down here, the two Federals, they are the hottest, right? They're coming in with the most amount of energy. However, the Wolves up here are the most accurate. These guys at 100 yards. So at 100 yards, these guys are getting 1 inch on that 18-inch barrel, where these two Federals typically come in at about 2.5 inches at 100 yards. So even though they're a little bit hotter, they tend to be a little bit less accurate. Okay, so there's the velocity data. All right, so despite all these velocity differences, they're all pretty much impacting at the same at 50 yards. Hey everyone, I wanted to clarify one thing, okay? So I said I shot here 5 different types of ammunition, different bullet weights, and originally I had zeroed in with a 77 grain bullet. Then I threw in some 55 grains, I threw in some 62 grains, and they're all, let's say, hitting about the same area, okay? So now if I shoot these at 200 yards, what's going to happen is they're all going to be on the paper, right? So I'm going to have that second 0 at 200 yards. But what's going to happen is, like, let's say the 77 grains might be towards the bottom. The 55 grains might be a little further up here. And that's fine. I mean, it's inside a man-sized target, okay? But if you need to have a perfect 0 at 200 yards, let's say, right? If you need that second 0 to be perfect at 200 yards, well, you just adjust it, okay? So if you come back to 50 yards, you might find that now you're a little bit lower or a little bit higher by whatever, half an inch or an inch. It doesn't make a difference, okay? So be comfortable with this idea that if you want that second 0 to be like dead on at 200 yards, you know, depending on what type of ammunition you're using, 55 grains, 62 grains, 77 grains, you may have to be content with your 50-yard 0 being, you know, either negative 1 inch or positive 1 inch. It doesn't matter, okay? So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. And usually if I'm using a scope that has a bullet drop compensator in it, what I really focus on is the 300-yard 0, okay? So, you know, basically I look at my bullet drop, I decide which line I want to be dead on at 300 yards, which is kind of like the halfway point between the 50-yard 0 and the 500-yard, you know, point of impact, okay? So I dial in at 300 yards, and then again at 50 yards, it doesn't matter if I'm 2 inches low or 2 inches high, and none of that makes a difference, you know. Or at 500 yards, you know, if I'm impacting up here or impacting down here, that doesn't make a difference either, because I'm inside of a man-sized target, okay? So that's kind of one of the things I wanted to lay out, because a lot of times when people talk about that 50-yard 0 gives you a second 0 at 200 yards, you know, they a lot of times what I find is that people think that what we mean is that it's going to be dead on at 200 yards. It'll be like, you know, and sometimes it is, right? Sometimes it just works out that way, depending on what ammunition you happen to be shooting. But it doesn't always work that way. It can be a little bit low, it can be a little bit high, depending on the weight of the bullet. Okay, so I just wanted to add that little bit of information. And I think a popular phrase that I have heard is, "Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good." Okay, so, you know, it doesn't, you know, if you got a 50-yard 0 and you're just a little bit low or a little bit high at 200 yards, that's fine, man. You'll still get on target. It's still effective. I'll talk to y'all soon.